Theater of the Mind.
Well, it happened again. I missed an episode. Mea culpa. To be honest, though, I think twice out of 79 episodes ain't really a bad record. And technically, both times I was hospitalized. Well, actually, last year I had already been home for a week or two, but hey, I'd had 2 strokes, and Chris suggested that I just sit that one out and catch the next show. I wasn't about to argue, because I wasn't exactly feeling my best. I sounded like shite anyway. This time, it was a bad tonsil infection, which meant that I sounded, once again, like the aforementioned shite, and just speaking hurt like hell. 2 whole months between shows, and it waits for that week to hit me. Since the treatment involved 2 days of intravenous medication every 6 hours, they kept me in the hospital for 2 nights. No one relishes the idea of being hospitalized, but to be quite honest, it wasn't really all that bad. I had my Kindle to read and my phone to watch YouTube videos. I got along well with all my nurses. Nurses always like me. I'm a pretty low-maintenance patient. I had a recliner and a comfortable bed that I could adjust in all kinds of positions, and a nice view from the window with lots of trees. And of course, I wasn't at work. And since I was using 2 of my vacation days, I was still getting paid. Now don't get me wrong, it wasn't much of a vacation. I really wanted to use those days to go camping in the fall, and I was technically trapped for 2 days with an IV connection stuck in my arm. But I was determined to relax and appreciate what was going right in the situation. First of all, I was getting better, and that was the important part. I walked the halls a lot, I enjoyed the view out the window, I had plenty to read, the food was actually pretty good, and I'd sent someone to pick up a few things from my apartment to make things a little more comfortable, and I could spend 2 days just relaxing. I just took a deep breath and I told myself, this isn't ideal, but it has some good points, so just focus on those and take the experience as a net positive. I did just that, and it worked. I managed to stay in decent spirits the whole time. The lion's share of how an experience makes you feel is determined by your own mindset. I've seen people on vacation being argumentative with each other and bitchy and miserable when everything was technically going along just fine. And some of my fondest, most fun memories of camping were during total rainouts. You just have to ask yourself, A, what is my real purpose for doing this? The answer to which is usually along the lines of, to have fun. And B, how is getting all stressed out going to affect my chances of getting answer A? The answer to which is, probably flush them right down the crapper. I bring this up because by the time you hear this, it's October. And if you work a regular job, there just ain't much time left. And some folks can start to feel a bit of haunt-build crunch time anxiety creeping in. This can crescendo into a lot of stress when H hour is upon us. Believe me, I've been there. We all have. If you haven't ever felt the anxiety of the impending Halloween deadline, you either haven't built a haunt or you're an android. A million little details that totally slipped your mind in the previous weeks and months of planning suddenly come to the forefront, demanding your attention. You spent so much time thinking about the spotlights and area lighting in a haunt that you never accounted for any backstage lighting where your actors will be moving about, trying not to trip over your extension cords. You got all your speakers purchased, but then you realize that you never mounted them and they just don't look right sitting on the floor in the corner of your mummy room. How about you're still painting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the 31st, and you have no idea if that paint will be dry when the people start showing up? I know that one from experience. Or you have the haunt shaping up according to schedule, but remember suddenly that you never finished your costume. Maybe your costume requires elaborate makeup and you won't have enough time to put it on before showtime. The clock is ticking, everyone involved in the haunt is scrambling, the battery in the screw gun is dead, someone misplaced the stapler, and tempers are wearing dangerously thin. People start sniping and barking at each other, and you start thinking in the back of your mind that this whole thing is a disaster and a bad idea, and that this is the last haunt. It just ain't worth it anymore. For some, this is a scenario repeated every year. They swear up and down that next year things will be different. They're going to plan it out much more meticulously and have every detail accounted for ahead of time. And the odds of that happening are, let's face it, pretty thin. It's almost impossible to account for every single detail. Stuff happens. How much it stresses you out, however, is your own choice. A little stress is a good thing. It's nature's way of lighting a fire under your ass and motivating you to shift into a higher gear. But getting totally stressed out is counterproductive. It leads to bad decisions, confusion, and stalls. It helps periodically to step back, take a deep breath and look at the big picture. Part of that involves reminding yourself of why you're doing this in the first place. And if you've been haunting for a few years or more, it helps to think back on previous haunts and remember how much fun you had in those. As an illustration, consider the home haunt of our G-host, Chris. His village mire is wicked awesome, and it's been very cool seeing it get more elaborate and built up over the years since we've been doing the show. It wasn't always the major spectacle that we see now. Years ago, his entire haunt was basically a soundtrack and a few props set up in his mudroom. Recently, he confided in me that he actually kind of misses those early days because it was so much simpler. He had a much more relaxed attitude toward Halloween night because there wasn't so much to be concerned about. He could basically hide in the shadows, activate his single jump scare prop, and enjoy scaring people. And that's really what it comes down to, enjoying what you're doing. Actually partaking in the Halloween fun as opposed to controlling and orchestrating a major production. Chris said he's going to be paring down his haunt a bit this year so he can give himself a break and enjoy the night a bit more. And there's a lot to be said for that. As our haunts evolve over the years, we can become victims of our own success. Getting bigger and better every year becomes an obsession. But that's a dangerous trap to fall into because at some point you're just not going to be able to outdo your last haunt. It's like a national economy. Growth is good, but it can't go on forever. At some point, it's going to stall out and recede. That's just how it works. And when we have a haunt year where we can't get any bigger or more elaborate, how will we handle that revelation? Do we get disappointed and bitter? I hope not. It may just be time to switch some things around for a different effect. Think about elements in the haunt that are consistent from year to year and just switch them up. Move the graveyard to another location. Take a prop or two that are usually front and center and hide them behind a tree or something so people can only see them peeking out from a particular angle as they walk past. Let something else take center stage. On the other end of the spectrum, maybe the haunt just won't be as built up as planned. If budget or time won't permit the grand plan version, always have a plan B or C to fall back onto. If that animatronic prop you're slaving over threatens to keep you from finishing your facade, just leave it as a static prop for this year. Not enough fence sections to surround your whole yard? Use what you have to enclose just your graveyard. If things are a bit sparse, kick up the ambiance. Are you using sound? Swapping out music soundtracks for an ambient background soundtrack can change the whole effect and add a lot of atmosphere to the visuals you do have. There's all kinds of sound effects tracks on YouTube, and there's some awesome horror-themed abstract ambient projects there. Check out Lustmord, Cryo Chamber, and Iron Cthulhu Apocalypse, to name a few. There's hours of great stuff to choose from. The most important thing to remember on show night is just to stay in the spirit. Enthusiasm is infectious. People who go to haunts have the best time when it's clear that the people putting on the haunt are having a good time. Never let yourself forget that we're doing this primarily for ourselves. If you're making yourself stressed out and miserable over it, then you're doing something wrong. If you're acting in the haunt, get into character and really become it. Fun's the name of the game. Forget about the things you wanted but didn't finish. Forget about details that didn't live up to plans. Appreciate what you got. Concentrate on every aspect of your haunt that does go right, every bit that looks and sounds good, and revel in it. If I can enjoy a hospital stay, there's no reason for a haunter to not enjoy Halloween to its fullest. In our first Halloween episode, I did a segment that compared and contrasted several different archetypes of haunters. A few examples were Joy, who just overflowed with love and excitement for haunting; Grace, who took everything in stride and didn't get stressed out or hung up on things; and Dick, the control freak who took the haunt way too seriously and ended up alienating everyone around him. A lot of the time, people who act like dicks do so not necessarily because they have naturally toxic personalities, but because they let themselves get spread too thin and they get overwhelmed and agitated. It's just not worth it. It's Halloween, for crying out loud. Celebrate. Take it in and enjoy it just as much as the haunt-goers and the trick-or-treaters. Your haunt is your own little world. Don't just build it, be it. Love it. Live it. From the Theater of the Mind, I'm Revenant, and you're listening to Hauntcast. Keep the ghost light burning, and happy Halloween.
I'm going now. Heaven help you.
Please like and follow the podcast. Stalk us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Links in the description. And help us by sharing Hauntcast with all your haunted Halloween brethren. Until next time, stay scary.